Sou Cassia e eu vou ser debatedora agora dessa mesa que é Nascimento e Risco. É a última mesa do congresso, um congresso ótimo, eu acho. Então, e desculpa meu português, mas eu vou tentar... faz sentido. Então, temos 3 pessoas, agora a Andreza Nakano, a Maria Openshaw e Isabel Cordoba. E eu vou falar só que a Isabel vai falar primeiro. Isabel is going to speak first. e ela vai falar em inglês. E, ok. Oh, espera um minuto. Essas duas, essas vão falar em inglês e a terceira em português.
Hello? Boa tarde. Vou falar em inglês, mas não falo muito português. Espanhol, maybe. My name is Isabel Cordoba, and I am a professor of history, so I am a historian by training, and my research is on the medicalization of childbirth and the history of the process of the medicalization of childbirth in Puerto Rico from the mid-20th century till the latter part of the 20th century. I wanted to first thank everybody, the organizers, for the wonderful job that they've done and for the invitation. It's particularly exciting for me as a medical historian because of the reputation that Brazil has and the work that Casa, Oswaldo, Cruz, and Fiocruz have. You've always done wonderful work, so thank you for all of your contributions. And also because it's exciting to be a part of an interdisciplinary conference, an interprofessional. I don't get those opportunities very often, so I thank you for that. Like I said, my research is on the medicalization of birthing in Puerto Rico, and I wanted to just say something quickly before I start, just in case people don't know that much about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, in terms of its social, cultural, and historical context, falls within Latin America, but it's been a part of the United States, so a colony of the United States for the past 100 plus years. So when I say federal government, I'm referring to the United States government, and when I say state government, I'm referring to local Puerto Rican government. After listening to all of the really interesting presentations yesterday and today, I thought that perhaps one of my contributions to the discussion is to offer sort of a more macro, broader look at the medicalization of birthing and sort of located it in its social, cultural, political context through the example of Puerto Rico. In the middle of the 20th century, there were about just over 700 doctors registered in the island of Puerto Rico and about 1,500 midwives. Over 60% of all births were assisted by midwives, most of them at home, while doctors, usually a general practitioner, attended 25% of all births, almost exclusively in the hospital setting. 20 years later, the midwife had disappeared and the number of physicians had almost tripled. As change swept over the island at an astounding pace under government-sponsored aggressive industrialization projects after mid-century, institutionally based knowledge We speak quickly in Puerto Rico. I will, I promise, yes. Okay. I don't even know where I was. Institutionally based knowledge consolidated its power. Many practices that had once occupied relatively isolated and intimate spaces, such as childbirth, began moving outwardly in search of experts and public services. The government grew, established itself as a colonial welfare system, looking to uplift and remake itself following an industrial model informed by rational, scientific planning, which ideally and conscientiously included even the most remote sectors of the island. So this history includes even remote rural sectors. Like most countries in the West, Puerto Rico sought to increase production and efficiency through industrialization and modernization. Ideally, the collection and analysis of statistics and scientific research projects directed by experts and technocrats would suggest how to best reorganize social, political, and economic systems. Accordingly, doctors came to hold the authoritative knowledge about the female body and birthing. Medicine constructed the body according to an industrial capitalist model of production and conceptualized reproduction in terms of efficiency and preset stages. Intuitive and more holistic conceptual approaches toward birth and the body, previously the purview of lay women, seated under the authority of the medical scientific specialist, and subsequently to broader corporate interests. In the 1960s, strong social and cultural forces were coalescing, which medicalized birthing. In the late 1960s, these forces included changes in social structures within the family and the workforce, as well as new scientific advances. The economic crisis of the 1970s resulted in a significant expansion of federal welfare programs motivated many women to leave their home in search of jobs and food stamps. Families sought out institutionally sanctioned experts and became active consumers of biomedicine as well as material culture. Puerto Rico became predominantly urban with a growing lower middle class. There were new considerations regarding risk management and fetal personhood that played significant roles in birthing in unprecedented ways. I argue that it was these kinds of social shifts that contributed toward the medicalization of birth. The general context of the public management of social tensions and ills provided fertile ground for the medicalization of birth. Along with the crisis in political activism came the stagnation of a once seemingly successful industrial project. The United States federal government increased funds for social relief and welfare with the hope of alleviating the social crisis, creating further dependency on the state. Over half of the general population fell under the poverty line and came to depend on government welfare programs, which permitted the state to monitor and control family life even more than ever. Reproduction was at the center of many discussions concerning civil rights, poverty reduction, and overpopulation. Malthusian theories were at the center of most of these discussions. Many women felt they needed to plan their families to secure a better future for themselves and their children. They sought medical and scientific expertise in order to do this and opened up their bodies to science in the hope of escaping biological impositions. By then, it was not only social scientists who studied the social body and offered analysis and solutions to problems, but the experts in the hard sciences and complex technology also made concrete and significant social contributions. Medicine, like the economy and social sciences, followed the path of heavy technology and further specialization, therefore redefining professional and patient relationships. Machines helped the medical gaze and penetrate the human body, and a new patient emerged, the previously inaccessible fetus. The establishment of perinatal medicine changed the face of obstetrics and birthing. Oddly, doctors came into tension with patients as they gained access to social clout through new technologies, but also found themselves having to justify their practice and decisions more than ever. Medicine became defensive, expensive, specialized, and technology-driven, but it also offered some new options for women. By the 1970s, midwives disappeared, and over 98% of women in Puerto Rico birthed in hospitals, mostly obstetricians. Puerto Rico's technocratic model of birth, hegemonic after the 1980s, required obstetricians and obstetric nurses in the company of heavy medical intervention and depended on medical technologies. Ironically, as obstetricians gained space and power, new threats like malpractice suits and soaring malpractice insurance costs began to undermine their profession. After the 1980s, births were monitored, and almost all women experienced childbirth with pain medication, episiotomies, and were connected to electronic fetal monitors and IVs. Shortly thereafter, between a fourth to half of all women delivered their babies by cesarean operations, surrounded by medical health care specialists moving about the maternity ward. But the authority of obstetricians as the sole gatekeepers of childbirth practices did not last long, as they found themselves constrained by new arrivals from insurance companies and the legal world. The emphasis Western societies have placed on risks, such as legal and health risks, have been key elements of the consolidation of the expert and professional power. Therefore, if midwives would have presented themselves as risk and uncertainty reducers, they would have been able to claim a professional space in this industrialized world, but they didn't. This ability to appear to reduce uncertainty forms part of the explanations for the rise of the expert obstetricians in Puerto Rico. The corporate legal framework that arose in the 1980s further transformed and constrained birthing practices and obstetricians. Along the same lines, women's birthing bodies were defined by obstetrics and later understood by the women themselves as insufficient or too defective to birth without medical intervention and assistance. Puerto Rico's medical schools and training have direct ties to the United States. Yet, curiously, the history of birthing has diverged in the two countries. Whereas by 1950, most U.S. births had already moved to the hospital setting, Puerto Rican women were still birthing primarily in the home with midwives up to the late 1960s. On the other hand, there have been strong movements to provide alternatives to biomedical hegemony in the United States, as well as some of other Latin American countries. Folkloric or traditional or alternative medicine coexists to some degree with mainstream Western biomedicine in Latin America. In important ways, many governments and medical institutions adapted to less interventionist, less authoritative medical protocols in different parts of the world during the late 20th century. They incorporated midwives, tried to reduce the number, of episiotomies and cesarean sections, and permitted mothers in labor to be accompanied by family and friends. In contrast, Puerto Rican medical authoritative hospital procedures went virtually uncontested and followed particularly extreme technocratic, interventionist, and hierarchical birthing practices. Episiotomies, cesareans, and restricted access to partners and family members persisted with little resistance. It's also likely, as is true of developing countries or communities struggling to improve their health conditions, that people in Puerto Rico were more inclined to accept medical technologies because they had not yet fully secured the same access to medical care as the U.S. white, middle class, or more privileged sectors of society, who more often sought alternatives to medicalized birthing models. By the 1960s, most Puerto Ricans would look toward expert scientific institutions to resolve issues pertaining to health and risk. Accordingly, mothers moved to hospital settings where expert science and regulations were at their disposal to supposedly protect them and their babies from possible risks. To refuse these options available to them made little sense to a population seeking to improve their standard of living and obtain first-rate health care, or what seemed to be first-rate health care. These new options available to women increased their demands and affected interventionist medical strategies in relation to the female body. The struggle to obtain access to safe abortions and contraceptives in order to liberate women from their biological destinies brought women closer to the world of medical interventions. Many women wanted to have fewer children and assure that the ones they had would run fewer risks. They did not want to leave their reproduction to chance, and pregnancy and birthing is necessarily uncertain. Fetal monitors, cesareans, and sonograms available by the 1970s gave a sense of control and reduction of uncertainty not only to the doctor but also the mother. Efficiency requires avoiding difficulties and pain, not doing more work than necessary, following predetermined routines, reducing risks, incorporating expert scientific knowledge and technological advances, and saving time. Brevity is valuable, and monitoring becomes a necessary factor. All of this, of course, lay the groundwork for the medicalization of and technocratic births. Many of the tools, such as sonograms, blood transfusions, etc., needed to monitor and regulate birthing were not widely available until after the 1960s. Often, professions in contemporary societies gain power and social legitimacy when what they do becomes related to concepts of risk. Sociologist Raymond DeVries argues that by associating childbirth with risk, or by identifying, naming, and classifying diseases, doctors gain prestige and power easily by presenting themselves as able to manage these situations. Medicine did not adopt aggressive, authoritative interventionist styles in obstetrics until the assumptions of risk and the perceived ability of the human body changed. The concept of risk itself moved swiftly up the socio-cultural ranks during the second half of the 20th century in Puerto Rico and became an important consideration in significant life events. People felt they had more choices, control, or could strive for a higher quality of life. They could weigh risk and even take the time to consider it seriously. There was a new collective agreement that sustained the truth claim that individuals could plan, control, and work toward a goal successfully. But this is true in a society where resources are available and life becomes less precarious. It is more characteristic of privilege. Social theorist Beck, in his book Risk Society Towards a New Modernity, writes that, and I quote, "Risk may be defined as a way of dealing with hazards and insecurities induced and introduced by modernization itself. In contrast to early epochs, the risk society is characterized essentially by a lack, the impossibility of an external attribution of hazards. The advanced industrial society, or what he calls reflexive modernity, that Beck refers to, is more advanced than the 1965 Puerto Rican one, but the early signs of the high-tech risk society were evident by the 1960s and certainly took root by the 1990s. The industrialization efforts between the 1940s and 70s most likely falls into Beck's simple modernity, but both simple and reflexive modernity's social structures seek control over nature, the socialization of scientific knowledge, the further division of labor, the preparation of experts, and greater predictability. These changing values and tendencies adapted by mothers, doctors, and midwives serve to regulate their behaviors, eliminating the need to resort to threats or overt campaigns in order to have them use the available tools of modernity. People seamlessly moved away from what they deemed as folkloric and backward for health and reproductive matters. For example, it was most often actually the lay midwife, the previous midwife before the 70s, who convinced many mothers to access government health services instead of continuing to birth with them at home. Experts and institutions were available and were legally and culturally sanctioned to reduce risk and increase predictability. They could intervene with nature and destiny to some extent. They had access to higher knowledge, operated within licensed institutions, and were allied with science and technology. People, including pregnant women and their families, began to leave their domestic settings in search of these experts due to a newfound trust in expert systems. Giddens, in an article, Risk and Responsibility, explains that a risk society is one where people live on a technological frontier preceded by the end of nature or the end of tradition. The end of nature refers to a time in human development where the majority of the natural or physical world is touched by human intervention, and the end of tradition refers to a move away from assuming fate and instead trying to take control of it. A risk society is not actually more dangerous or hazardous than its predecessor, where notions of risk were not prevalent. Traditional societies assumed that life came with hazards from God and nature. And I quote, "The idea of risk is bound up with the aspiration to control, and particularly with the idea of controlling the future. A risk society is a society increasingly preoccupied with the future and also safety." End quote. Childbirth before the 1960s in Puerto Rico fell within the paradigms of what Giddens describes as traditional social expectations after the 1970s within a risk society. Beginning in the 1960s, though, while many physicians continued to describe childbirth as a natural phenomenon, medical discourse began referring to labor and delivery as potentially pathological and high risk. Some took a particularly extremist stance. A prominent retired Puerto Rican obstetrician, Dr. Onís, trained in the mid-1950s, and when I interviewed him was much later, described all births as abnormal. According to him, all first-time deliveries are high risk by definition. Specialization led to more aggressive medical practices, and a higher perception of risk demanded expertise. At mid-century, only select physicians had adopted specialist discourses and identities. They rarely referred to technological interventions as a sign of good medicine in birthing. By the late 1960s, this was no longer the case. Doctors began to specialize and aggressively manage pregnancy, labor, and delivery because it was considered more often than not a pathological process. Along these lines, more experts were in demand to cover the different medical subfields such as anesthesia, perinatal medicine, etc., and a centralized system of data collection and record keeping emerged. Specialists, technologies, and institutional areas developed in response to these demands, and with these developments came new anxieties. By 1980, one could safely make several assumptions about the experience of childbirth in Puerto Rico. A specialized team would take care of the mother and newborn in a hospital setting. This medical team would connect the mother to machines, make some kind of surgical incision in the mother's body, often several, and prescribe medication during labor and delivery. The newborn would later sleep and be fed in a hospital nursery. These were all routine standards of practice after the 80s on the islands. Birthing in this final stage of the 20th century was not merely medicalized, it operated under a new model of care. Medical anthropologists like Robbie Davis Floyd describes this model of birth as a technocratic model of birth. Its definition is that it reflects the technocratic society's core values. It conceives of the mother's body as a defective machine, and it assumes the inherent superiority of technologies used to correct and counteract deficiencies to improve the performance. As practiced in Puerto Rico, this technocratic childbirth was also interventionist, surgically inclined, and shaped by a new litigation-based climate. It is a stage in the history of childbirth replete with ironies, where the very models aimed to resolve one issue could inadvertently instigate an opposing result. As childbirth became less of a potential hazard to mother and baby, maternal and morbidity rates had improved significantly. Obstetrics defined it as innately hazardous and risky. Moreover, increased interventions designed to reduce risk and hazard introduced new threats. Courts, seeking to protect patients from poor medical practices, could steer doctors away from best practices, and insurance companies would begin to deter physicians from obstetrics. In Puerto Rico, as in the United States, by the end of the century, there existed a slight erosion of medical authority in favor of managed care and corporatized medicine. And new players such as pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, and interest groups entered the scene as potential power brokers. By placing the delivery of their babies in the hands of obstetric teams and high-tech hospitals, mothers partially relieved themselves of the inconveniences of childbirth and its outcomes, transferring them into the hands of hospital medical teams. As a result, obstetrics became more authoritative and interventionist, but patients also increasingly blamed obstetrics for deficient outcomes, thereby leading obstetrics in a litigation-based direction. Fewer babies were birthed vaginally, and more were delivered surgically than ever before, while the fear of lawsuits and astronomical costs of malpractice insurance simultaneously crushed obstetricians and even forced many out of practice. The beginning of the breakdown of the doctor-patient relationship in the 60s and 70s in large part was due to urbanization and professional specialization. When medical care moved out of the domestic sphere, the doctor was no longer a member of the local community and connected to the family, as he had been. The deterioration of the doctor-patient relationship accompanied the medicalization of childbirth. While most post-industrial culture imbued doctors with a newfound scientific authority, which the state sanctioned, it also identified doctors as strangers and part of the corporate, institutionalized world. Once patients learned that the hand that healed also was capable of harm, and that patients could demand compensation for any wrongdoing, litigations increased. This is part of the cultural skepticism derived from late industrial societies, labeled as risk societies by Giddens. By generating public concern over malpractice, doctors unknowingly rendered themselves more vulnerable to malpractice claims. Just as obstetrics gained universal control over birthing practices, patient-doctor relationships deteriorated concurrently. This growing skepticism is what Giddens has identified as reflexive doubt. I quote, "Reflexive doubt refers to a critical reflection on the risks posed by complex technological systems, and second, the institutional, political, and economic factors that shape the determination of acceptable risk levels by socially sanctioned experts and authorities." Close quote. It's a kind of cultural skepticism that arises from the alliances between corporations, science, government, technologies, and expert systems. Healthcare by the 1980s was managed by a complicated set of factors. Medical administrator Ivan Colon published an article in the Puerto Rican Medical Association's Journal in 1987 on the modern concept of medical risk management. He explained that modern medicine involved a dependency on biomedical technology and complex administrative processes that regulate medical practice. According to Colon, risk management was the relationship between insurance and quality control. The motors that drove technocratic medicine and created a demand for risk management included an array of paradoxical elements. Medical technologies which usually increase the complexity and risks of medical practice and inflated costs while becoming a necessity for documentation and diagnostic purposes. Cost control, which limited interventions doctors and hospitals could perform. Quality of patient care, which required more guarantees as patients became more frustrated and demanding with their care. And the stipulations of regulatory agencies such as Medicare, the Health Department, and the Joint Commission. Risk management needed to juggle all of these issues, and administrators like Colon were aware that the medical practices needed to operate within all of these parameters and avoid breaching pre-established protocol. The autonomy of the individual physician as well as the patient was constrained within this context, which is an irony, as many of the reasons for these constraints stemmed from seeking professional autonomy and patient rights. After the 70s, deliveries by cesarean sections skyrocketed, and in some hospitals became as common as vaginal deliveries, and we also see in private hospitals they're much higher than public. Since the 80s, Puerto Rico has maintained its rank with Brazil among the countries with the highest rates of cesarean deliveries. In 1989, a new category was included on the Puerto Rican birth certificate in order to track the methods of birth. Since then, Puerto Rican birth certificates included a section indicating whether the birth was surgical. Half of all of 1989 births in private hospitals were by C-section. The US and Puerto Rican cesarean rates were similar in the 80s, but while rates in the United States remained relatively steady, they doubled in Puerto Rico over the subsequent 2 decades. The high rates in part were a product of doctors in Puerto Rico being less likely than US doctors to allow women with a previous cesarean to deliver vaginally. the rates of cesareans increased with the age and level of education of the mother, as they do in other parts of the world. This global trend ties surgical deliveries to social class. Whereas in 1950, a pregnant woman could safely assume that she would birth vaginally, by the 90s, women were aware that their babies had a good chance of being removed from their wombs surgically. In 1950, medical standards classified doctors with rates of cesarean deliveries higher than 10% as incompetent. In the early 1960s, cesareans constituted over 5% of all deliveries on the island. They went up to 27% by 1980, around 33% by 1990, and well over 40% by 96. In the 50s, cesareans were surgical life-saving procedures, not precautionary or preventative procedures. They were performed only as a last resort when the mother's life, and in rare cases, the newborn's life, was in danger. Originally, doctors strived to maintain low cesarean rates due to the negative impact a high rate could have on their medical practice. In the 90s, birth by cesarean was cast in a new light by doctors and patients. Most people associated cesareans with good obstetric practice, and doctors knew it could even protect doctors from possible lawsuits, while leaving the recent mother feeling more grateful and reassured that she had been served by a highly qualified specialist. Childbirth and obstetric practice moved under the shadows of risk, and cesareans managed those risks. And I'll leave it there. Thank you. Are we going in order?
A próxima apresentação é de Andreza Nakano, que é uma das co-organizadoras desse programa e que trabalha com a gente desde muito tempo sobre a peligros de sobre o problema de medicalização de parto. Andreza, qual é o título da apresentação?
Vou colocar aqui, Ilana. A gente tinha invertido a ordem. Se você não se importasse.
Não, eu não vi isso. Nunca me vi.
Mas tudo bem.
Você vai fazer a história, não?
Não, o meu não.
Ok, então vamos, desculpe, então vamos, não sabe, porque eu olho a ordem, ok, então vai ser, tá, não, tá bom, vai ser a Maria.
Tá? Eu vou começar de qualquer forma.
Tá, ok. Não, acho que é melhor fazer as coisas como a última sobre a Partner in Health.
A Ilana perguntou aqui. Então, hoje, vou apresentar, né, uma parte do nosso trabalho. Como a Ilana falou, a gente já vem trabalhando com o tema da medicalização do parto há alguns anos. O que eu trouxe hoje para a gente discutir é também parte desse trabalho anterior, que inicia lá em 2011, né, como uma parte de entrevistas com as mulheres da Nascer no Brasil, numa pesquisa coordenada pela Cláudia Bonan e pelo Luiz Teixeira, que a gente entrevista, então, mulheres que realizaram cesáreas, né, nesse setor específico. E, naquele momento, em 2011, foi quando também eu comecei a tese de doutorado, onde eu estava investigando a questão da normalização da cesárea no Brasil. Hoje, o foco, então, é apresentar reflexões específicas sobre essa reengenharia da economia dos riscos no contexto das cesarianas, a partir das narrativas de mulheres e obstetras que são formadores de opinião. Eu estou de uma forma privilegiada, porque ontem o panorama que a Maria do Carmo Leal e a Carla Polido, né, já apresentaram, já demonstra bem o nosso cenário, né, do que a gente está falando de cesáreas. Nesse conjunto das cesarianas, eu digo especificamente, né, naquele quadrinho, naquele slide que a Duca tinha trazido, eu falo daquele universo do setor privado, né, que corresponde a 20% dos nascimentos no Brasil, onde acontece os 20% do nascimento, e dentro desses nascimentos, quase 90% deles são de cesarianas. Então, é deste universo que eu estou falando. Claro que neste universo que a gente tem investigado também é uma relação muito específica dessas mulheres e profissionais com as tecnologias. Então, contextualizado, acho que a gente começa. As práticas de parto, eu vou preferir ler também para a gente, por conta do tempo. As práticas do parto sofreram transformações intensas, né, ao longo do século XX. Um dos aspectos mais proeminentes é a difusão da cirurgia cesariana. Lembrando que, como a gente disse ontem, ele é um aspecto proeminente, mas ele é uma ponta de um conjunto de outras intervenções também que fazem parte. Pela magnitude da cesariana, ela é, então, considerada um problema de saúde pública e tem sido objeto de diversos estudos, controvérsias, que envolvem não somente médicos, outros profissionais da saúde, pesquisadores de diversas áreas, né, autoridades, representantes políticos, instituições, movimentos sociais, organização de mulheres, e também ocupam vários espaços de debate público, né, mídias, redes sociais, órgãos executivos, parlamento, entre outros. Diversas dimensões do fenômeno da cesariana têm sido estudadas e alguns estudiosos chegam a questionar se a utilização da operação cesariana não teria se tornado o modo normal de nascer na atualidade, né, nos quais eu também, com esses estudos anteriores, a gente se inclui. O cenário das cesarianas no Brasil ele não pode ser entendido somente a partir das práticas profissionais e institucionais, e nem mesmo no plano das escolhas individuais. Para avançar na compreensão dessa realidade e explorar outros meandros do fenômeno, nós nos propusemos a investigar mais em profundidade como que as tecnologias médicas capturam as experiências humanas e sociais e o contexto de criação desses ambientes de ambientes e práticas tecnológicas. Apoiados, né, como a Cláudia ontem também já apontou, na compreensão de cultura material, de co-constituição, usuário, tecnologia, exploramos o papel dessas tecnologias na reorganização de ideias, valores, relações e interações entre indivíduos, grupos e instituições no âmbito do parto no Brasil. O nosso argumento é que está em desenvolvimento no Brasil um sistema de normas em torno do parto e do nascimento, no qual a prática da cesariana tem sido incorporada por obstetras e mulheres como o novo normal. Escolhemos aprofundar nas relações entre mulheres, médicos, técnicas e instrumentos no cenário do parto, especialmente no setor privado de atenção à saúde, por reconhecer que as práticas são definidas predominantemente a critério de profissionais e mulheres, né? Como bem ontem também já colocaram as questões dos protocolos institucionais. Nessa apresentação, a gente explora, então, as noções de risco relacionada à prática da cesárea e analisar como se promove essa reengenharia da economia dos riscos na cena do parto, onde a gente já sabe que riscos de várias ordens são equacionados. Aqui, então, eu vou apresentar material analisado a partir de 33 entrevistas com mulheres que realizaram cesárea no setor privado, que, como a Duca já disse, né, essa questão dos quase 90% são cesarianas, que inclui, nesse setor privado, o atendimento conveniado na plano de saúde, mas também aqueles realizados sob pagamento direto ao profissional e à maternidade. E as 11 entrevistas com os médicos obstetras, que são aqueles formadores de opinião, que nós entendemos esses formadores como aqueles que são professores nas escolas de medicina, formando os outros médicos nas cadeiras de obstetrícia, aqueles que respondem publicamente pelas associações de classe nas questões da cesariana, diretores de maternidade, pesquisadores proeminentes na área. Então, este é o grupo. As mulheres desse conjunto, então, para a gente só contextualizar, essas mulheres, elas são jovens, têm em média 30 anos, em maioria têm nível superior, exercem profissões liberais, vivem com companheiros, têm 1 ou 2 filhos e, em geral, os seus primeiros filhos também nasceram de cesariana. A vida reprodutiva dessas mulheres é projetada para quando se atinge uma situação material e profissional favorável. A gravidez é planejada e inclui a busca de cuidados específicos, mesmo antes da concepção, por exemplo, a realização de exames para verificar as condições de saúde, tomar ácido fólico e tal. Elas aderem a rotinas médicas de prevenção em saúde, como, por exemplo, preventivo ginecológico, fazem ultrassonografia transvaginal, exames de sangue periódicos, visitas regulares a dentistas, dermatologistas. Então, são esse conjunto de cuidados, né, incluem também os cuidados pré-concepcionais e pré-natais, que eles aparecem nesse contínuo de cuidados rotineiros com a saúde. Portanto, para essas mulheres, produzir a saúde e a vitalidade com tecnologias médicas é algo bastante incorporado entre elas. Entre os obstetras formadores de opinião, eles são representantes de classe, como eu já disse. 3 deles tinham concluído seus estudos na década de 1960, 4 na década de 80 e 1 se graduou em 99, o que também se mostrou como compondo 3 gerações, né, de obstetras. Em maioria, eles são provenientes de faculdades públicas. 2 já tinham se aposentado da prática clínica, mas todos tinham atividade na formação de outros profissionais. Eles compartilham, né, esses obstetras compartilham a ideia de que a obstetrícia ela se aprende na prática. O conhecimento teórico é ponto de partida para a experiência, mas é na prática que a profissão se desenvolverá o saber que habilita a avaliar e a criticar, aceitar ou contestar, incorporar ou refutar os postulados do ofício, que consolidarão com os regimes de verdade que nortearão seu modo de agir. Portanto, colocar a mão na massa, ainda durante a formação universitária, acompanhar partos e participar de cesarianas, fazem parte do processo que torna o profissional pronto para atuar em quaisquer circunstâncias. Antever e intervir é o modo de agir dessa obstetrícia. Ao explorar essas ideias, valores e sentidos envolvidos na utilização da cirurgia nos nascimentos, encontramos entre mulheres e médicos que a cesárea é apresentada como um modo normal de nascer, uma via de parto, segura, moderna e aceitável para todas as circunstâncias. Para as mulheres, a cesárea reapresenta as técnicas do corpo e reconfigura o seu papel no parto. E já para os obstetras, a cesárea incorpora sentidos de modernidade e progresso no campo das técnicas cirúrgicas, e eles participam ativamente no processo de adaptar a cirurgia a novas demandas, sejam elas clínicas ou sociais. Consideramos, então, que a cultura material do parto e do nascimento no Brasil é marcada pelo uso de tecnologias. Pelo uso da tecnologia cirúrgica, para a qual concorrem as ideias de risco, de segurança, de integridade corporal e de melhoramento nos processos fisiológicos de inserção na modernidade. Nesse sentido, a gente pensa, então, o que está nessa gestão dos perigos e dos riscos associados a esse procedimento que contribuiriam para essa realização da cesariana. É preciso, então, demarcar que a linguagem do risco na contemporaneidade ela perpassa os discursos dos diferentes atores do parto, né? A gente bem viu, desde ontem nas mesas também, como que o risco está presente nessa gestão. Tanto gestores de políticas, profissionais da área da saúde ou não, pesquisadores, ativistas de movimentos sociais e mulheres incorporam esse discurso do risco para falar sobre o parto. E o risco, então, se tornou um conceito-chave relacionado aos cuidados à maternidade e ao parto. As perspectivas teóricas sobre as quais podemos analisar o risco na cena do parto, elas são diversas. E, conforme nos apresenta Lupton, todas enfatizam uma natureza social, cultural e política do risco. Mas cada uma delas oferece abordagens e nuances um pouco diferentes para o fenômeno do risco como socialmente construído. A autora argumenta que essas abordagens, por operarem no nível das grandes teorias, pouco incluem os modos como as pessoas conceitualizam e experienciam o risco como parte de suas vidas. Para a autora, precisamos ter melhor compreensão de como as lógicas do risco são produzidas e operam no nível das experiências situadas. Para além da questão do risco, que está atrelado, relacionado, atribuído ao parto e à cesárea pelos estudos científicos e epidemiológicos, estamos interessados em como mulheres e médicos colocam em cena riscos, benefícios, perigos, ameaças, perdas e ganhos e de que forma lidam com eles. Que riscos são esses? Como fazem essa gestão dos riscos? Para a gente conhecer, então, um pouquinho, entre as mulheres, a cesariana, ela é Falar propriamente de parto é falar de cesárea. Nesse universo dessas mulheres, falar de parto é, em primeira instância, falar de cesariana, né? Ontem a Cláudia, eu até brinquei com ela, que ela deu alguns spoilers de falas que eu estava trazendo, mas é bem nesse sentido, né? Que desde sempre, como a fala dessa mulher, desde sempre eu quis a cesariana, porque eu acho que no auge da tecnologia do século XXI, as pessoas quererem ter filho igual a índio não rola, entendeu? Eu mesma nunca quis o parto normal, eu sempre quis cesárea. Hoje em dia é praticamente a mesma coisa. Tanto normal como cesárea, toma anestesia, toma tudo. A diferença é que a pessoa fica lá horas em trabalho de parto, fazendo força e tal. Estou fora. A minha cirurgia começou às 10 e às 10h33 ela nasceu. Então, para além só dessa ideia do procedimento cirúrgico, tem toda uma incorporação de que o procedimento ele vai ser hospitalar, ele vai ser acompanhado e que ele tem um tempo também para ser gerido, né? E essa ideia de que o parto, no caso a cirurgia abdominal, ela passa a representar um parto que ele é moderno, que ele é seguro, ele é normal, né? Ele é até normal. E ele é fácil. E, nesse sentido, para essas mulheres também, o parto vaginal aparece como uma excepcionalidade, né? Existem condições para que a mulher possa ter o parto normal, mas para a cesariana não há restrições, todas elas podem se submeter. A gente precisa também pensar que, nesse conjunto da cesariana, quando elas falam, elas não estão falando propriamente, somente da cirurgia. Há um conjunto de tecnologias não médicas, né, que compartilham valor e centralidade com as tecnologias médicas. Então, a cesariana carrega consigo também outras tecnologias não médicas que vão ajudar no fortalecimento da escolha, inclusive, dessa cesariana. Eu vou te falar a verdade, parece que a gente está num hotel muito bom. Bom atendimento, a gente fica mais tranquila, dá uma segurança a mais. Profissional capacitado, afinal de contas, ele é o médico e ele sabe fazer cesariana. E, ao mesmo tempo, um lugar que não seja tanto um hospital. Não tem aquela coisa, eu estou no hospital. Aquela carga negativa de estar acontecendo alguma coisa. Lá só tem bebezinho nascendo, sabe? Todos os quartinhos com florzinha, todo mundo feliz, né? Outras pessoas, outros entes da família nascendo e tal. Os familiares estão sempre com um sorrisão, todo mundo feliz. Isso acho que muda um pouco o clima. Nesse sentido, a cesariana também, ela se apresenta como um evento, mas é um evento que está sendo planejado para uma determinada hora, com determinada participação de pessoas e que exige também uma gestão neste sentido. Entre os obstetras formadores de opinião, a cesárea ela é apresentada como um procedimento cirúrgico, claro. É um procedimento cirúrgico, mas que está envolvido de valores como muito simples. Em termos de velocidade, ela é rápida, né? Então exige menos tempo. E também segurança. E que esses itens combinados, simplicidade, velocidade e segurança, acabam fortalecendo a ideia de que é melhor fazer o procedimento do que esperar horas por outras vias. A técnica cirúrgica lista também vários valores, não é só a questão, talvez menos a questão clínica, né? E mais a questão social, estética, do próprio mercado. A estética também, porque tem a ideia do parto que é limpo, né? Daquele procedimento que pode ser exibido, mas que aquele sangue que sai da cirurgia pode ser visto, mas outros fluidos em outros cenários não. Então, esses valores também se apresentam abrindo novas frentes para outros arranjos sociotécnicos, como a cesariana programada, a proteção, né, também dos litígios, né, para evitar processos de nascimento limpo e ordenado. Se a cesariana não fosse de boa aceitação, não importava a conveniência. Então, muitas coisas, a conveniência e o aspecto estético. Então, a cesariana foi trivial. Isso é o que penso sobre técnica da cesárea, que foi bastante simplificada pelos brasileiros. E aqui eu vou fazer uma parte que a gente tem também uma outra parte de trabalho, né, em que a gente investiga como é que o Rezende foi protagonista nesse cenário de desenvolver a técnica da cesariana no Brasil e de propagar também a cesariana, tornando esse procedimento simples, fácil e rápido. Os obstetras também assinalam a diferença entre a cesárea da prática e a cesárea da evidência científica, que comunica muito com aquela apresentação da Carla de ontem, né? Nesse sentido, eles estão combinando riscos de diversas ordens, não apenas e talvez marginalmente mesmo os riscos epidemiológicos se apresentam. A máxima que muito se repete ainda: eu nunca me arrependi de uma cesárea que eu tenha feito, mas eu me arrependi de alguns partos que eu fiz. Não adianta querer dizer, né, que a cesariana mata 2 vezes mais. Não mata mesmo, é mentira. Na vida pessoal, a mulher não conhece ninguém que morreu de cesariana. Se não me engano, hoje Janaína tinha uma fala também muito semelhante. Eu faço uma medicina muito como eu acho que deva ser. Eu não estou sujeito a nenhuma regulamentação. Eu tenho 100% de cesárea. Se eu achar que é assim, é melhor. Então, essa ideia também de que não há nenhuma determinação de nenhum lugar que vai dizer como é que essa prática do obstetra deva acontecer. Eu fiz um salto porque eu acho que é importante a gente ter tempo para essa parte aqui. Quando, então, a gente vai olhar para os riscos, a gente vê que o que está colocado em cena são riscos de outra ordem, que não o risco que a gente mais mensura quando a gente fala da cesariana propriamente. Então, no cenário da utilização das cesarianas no setor privado de atenção à saúde, onde uma parte importante corresponde a procedimentos cirúrgicos agendados previamente, aquela nomenclatura da cesariana anteparto, né? Ou decididas antes mesmo, né, de iniciado o trabalho de parto, identificamos que na gestão dos riscos, os riscos obstétricos são colocados à margem e outras possibilidades de perdas e ganhos ganham centralidade. Nomeamos a reengenharia da economia de riscos o equacionamento dos perigos, das seguranças, das perdas, dos ganhos e dos benefícios colocados em cena e em jogo nas práticas de parto. Em especial, as cesarianas realizadas em condições eletivas. Riscos de diversas ordens são conjugados, colocados na balança, e o risco epidemiológico, amplamente discutido nas questões do parto, é somente uma parte deles. A complexidade dos riscos no parto estão apresentadas em estudos realizados nos mais diversos cenários no Brasil. McCallum e Reis encontraram entre mulheres do setor público que a solidão, as dores, os maus-tratos relacionam uma experiência negativa com o parto vaginal, que constrói a ideia dos benefícios do parto tecnológico. Outro estudo identificou que mulheres, tanto do setor público quanto do setor privado, consideraram perigoso o parto normal vaginal, enquanto a cesárea se associa a aspectos de segurança. As ideias de benefício e segurança da cesárea estão presentes entre mulheres entrevistadas, mas não resumem toda a questão da utilização da cirurgia. Entram na equação dos riscos a possibilidade de não ter vaga na maternidade desejada, dada a frequência de agendamentos antecipados, de não sair bem na fotografia, de perder o autocontrole e a gestão do ritual do nascimento, e de não poder contar com a participação de familiares. É alguém que vai viajar e que não vai poder estar naquele momento. Então, dá-se essa possibilidade. Os argumentos da saúde pública em torno do combate à epidemia de cesarianas no país estão embasados nas melhores evidências científicas, em especial aquelas produzidas pela medicina baseada em evidências, e na necessidade de mudança do modelo hospitalar tecnocrático predominante no Brasil. A utilização das cesáreas caracteriza-se como um problema de saúde pública. Todavia, para os profissionais, os usuários e os serviços impregnados pela lógica biomédica, os riscos epidemiológicos estão minimizados e cercados por uma ideia de que, por serem conhecidos, são mais suscetíveis de serem controlados e quase sempre tomados como os riscos relativos. Na equação dos riscos, os riscos controlados da cirurgia têm menos peso do que a inespecificidade do arriscado parto vaginal. Por mais que um controle sobre a totalidade dos riscos seja uma ilusão, o controle de alguns riscos parece atender mais às necessidades dos sujeitos envolvidos no parto do que o controle de outros. Decisões e desejos sobre tais ou tais modos de parir e fazer nascer é também, de um certo modo, uma ponderação de quais riscos vale mais a pena correr e de que tipo de recursos podem controlá-los. Em uma sociedade liberal burguesa, mulheres e médicos encontram no setor privado uma maior liberdade para eleger o peso atribuído a cada tipo de risco. Nesse cenário, os riscos calculados epidemiologicamente, mesmo que venham a ser amplamente divulgados, podem permanecer inexpressivos na balança dessas condições locais e das necessidades que definirão a utilização ou não do procedimento cirúrgico nos nascimentos, fazendo o fiel pender mais para a cesariana. As necessidades dos sujeitos, portanto, permeiam no peso atribuído a cada item da economia dos riscos e nos resultados finais dessa equação. A lógica das necessidades ampliadas dos sujeitos abre margem para um reconhecimento das cesáreas justificadas pelo medo da dor, desejo de participação de um membro da família ou até mesmo desejo de programar o evento social do nascimento. Ao compartilhar novas necessidades, como, por exemplo, necessidades estéticas, mulheres e obstetras atribuem novos valores, mas também somam novos itens a gerenciar nessa economia dos riscos no parto. Nessa apresentação, então, partimos da análise do processo de normalização da cesárea no Brasil para dar início a novas reflexões e pensar nas transformações que essa normalização tem trazido para a economia de riscos na gravidez e parto. Mulheres e obstetras entrevistados assumem o parto como um evento de risco, que precisa ser monitorado, acompanhado e assistido com os melhores recursos disponíveis. Situam o parto como um evento médico e intra-hospitalar, onde se encontram tecnologias médicas reunidas. Impera em suas narrativas a lógica biomédica na gestão dos riscos, achado semelhante também ao de Chadwick e Foster. Encontraram entre mulheres de classe média que escolheram cesáreas planejadas na África do Sul. No entanto, apesar de reconhecermos que essa lógica predomina, torna-se evidente que não são os riscos clínicos epidemiológicos que prevalecem. A utilização de técnicas e tecnologias no processo de parturição não implica apenas decisões técnicas com ponderação de risco ou benefícios. Elas têm implicações no status social de mulheres e médicos, na busca por cuidados considerados de melhor qualidade e pode informar sobre o modo de parir compartilhado pela sociedade. Acreditamos que existe, sim, um equilíbrio inteligente de riscos, ponderação de riscos e contextualização de riscos, como afirma a Roth. E estamos atentos para as maneiras pelas quais mulheres e médicos obstetras equilibram riscos. No entanto, como analisam Cox e colaboradoras, não podemos perder de vista que o manejo desses riscos torna-se um meio através do qual a regulação moral do comportamento social se apresenta. As mensagens de risco têm forte tom moral, depositando sobre os indivíduos a responsabilidade de identificar os riscos e gerenciá-los. Para essas autoras, essa centralidade nos indivíduos afasta as questões mais ampliadas envolvidas em desfechos negativos, tais como as desigualdades sociais, serviços ineficientes e infraestrutura inadequada. Ao admitirem que mulheres e médicos são afetados de modo semelhante, imputando individualmente o peso do risco e a necessidade da consciência do risco, Coxon e colaboradoras argumentam que, através do manejo do risco, médicos também estão participando da regulação moral das mulheres e das novas famílias, ao que também devemos ficar atentos nas análises. Portanto, gerir, balancear e equilibrar riscos é uma parte importante do modo como mulheres e obstetras desenvolvem práticas de parto, particularmente no entendimento e uso da cesárea como modo normal de fazer nascer. Esse achado da pesquisa colabora de modo importante para novos rumos no processo de enfrentamento à questão dos partos medicalizados, na qual as taxas de cesariana podem ser consideradas a ponta do iceberg. Consideramos que, mesmo que sejam conhecidos e divulgados os riscos das intervenções, isso não resolve o problema, nem promove a redução das cesáreas. O imperativo de tornar-se um risk manager está colocado para o nosso grupo de entrevistados. E diante de tantas dimensões diferentes dos riscos, é preciso que estejamos atentos aos novos sentidos de risco forjados na cena de parto.
Muito obrigado, Andreza. A última como apresentação dessa mesa vai ser Maria Openshaw, que é de Partners in Health, parceiros na saúde, que é uma organização muito importante nos Estados Unidos de saúde global, que se dedicada para a promoção da saúde em alguns lugares do mundo e também avançar a saúde primária para a população negligada. Por favor, Maria, please, Maria, your
Thank you.
phone.
Thanks so much. Give me one moment here. Very close. All right. All right, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for staying to see the very end of the symposium. I have the privilege of being the last to speak. All right. Thanks to everyone who has gone before me and given their talks, to those who participated on the panels. Thank you to the coordinators who invited me here to participate with you all. Thanks to the interpreters who have made this a bit easier, both for me and for those of you who are about to hear my presentation. And a thank you as well to all the people who I'm sure are working behind the scenes in the back, upstairs, the ones who made our coffee and snacks this morning, and those who will stay long after we go to clean up after us. So really appreciated. I'm happy to be here back in Brazil. It's not my first time here, actually. I came for the first time to Rio de Janeiro when I was a little girl. I got my very first passport so that I could come visit the city with my family. I don't know, in the early 90s, I think. And since then, I have filled a few passports, and now I work, as Ivana said, I work in global health. So I'm going to be talking to you today about some work that I've done in Malawi, which is in Africa. I'll tell you about that. And the title of this presentation is Balancing Too Far to Walk with Too Much Too Soon. And it's about midwifery and mothers' lives in rural Malawi. And I'm speaking today on behalf of Partners in Health, yes, and also the University of California, San Francisco's Center for Global Health. So I work for a program that is sponsored by UCSF. It's funded through private philanthropy, and so I have no disclosures. Briefly, these are some objectives to the session. I won't be presenting original research. I'll be talking about the work that I do and talking about a classic model about maternal morbidity and mortality and some more recent thinking about practice of midwifery and maternal health care in low-resource settings. And I'm also going to tell you a story about a woman that I took care of the past few months as perhaps an example of the intersection between too much too soon, too little, too late, medicalization, or as I've said here, over-medicalization, and what that looks like in a rural setting. So I am, first, where I'm coming from, I'm a registered nurse and a certified nurse midwife. I was educated in the United States, and in Malawi I practice also as a registered nurse midwife. So this is a cadre of specialist nurses who have training in both midwifery and nursing. I know you don't have something exactly the same here in Brazil. But most CNMs, as we're called, work in a hospital setting, but we're also qualified to attend out-of-hospital birth. So births in homes, births in health centers, births in birth centers, and that's my background and perhaps my interest in practicing in different contexts as a midwife. So when I worked in the U.S., I worked both in a urban hospital, teaching hospital that was perhaps similar to one of your public facilities here in the city, and I also worked in a natural birth center. I became very interested at that time in the relationship between place of birth and providers' concepts of risk. Because we always said that the reason why out-of-hospital birth was so safe is because we were very particular about how it was done and which women, which patients were able to do it. Many of these facilities have a list of conditions that are excluded, a list of things that a woman has to do to show her participation in the labor, and that's what we do to keep birth in these contexts safe. Of course, you guys know California, where I trained. And that picture doesn't show very well. Malawi is a very small landlocked country in southeastern Africa. Can you see it? No. It borders Mozambique. It's landlocked, and that's where I'm operating from right now. It's too bad. As well, I'll be talking, of course, about too much too soon and too little too late. And this is an illustration of global maternal mortality. And this is my one slide to illustrate too little too late. So you can see very well the colors here. The dark purple that goes across sub-Saharan Africa. My country is very small there, but it's dark purple as well, so it has MMR of above 500. And then you can see here we are where I am from, lighter colors as well. So the MMR in Malawi is 634 in 2015. Their national statistics cite it as 439, but it's about 10 times the maternal mortality in Brazil. And this is the accompanying slide of the too much too soon, right? So these are the cesarean rates by country. And so you see Brazil gets to be this dark red color because you have more than 35% cesarean rate. And these purple are the places where it's much less utilized. Cesarean, of course, is only one marker for the uptake of obstetric care, but it's one that we've talked about a lot over the past couple of days, so I thought I would show this to you as well. And those very few green countries are the ones that fall in that range of 10 to 15%, which is recommended by the World Health Organization. Of course, as you'll see in my story, it's not only about the right number of cesareans, but making sure the right women are getting them, the ones who need them, and the ones who perhaps don't need them are not. Just a bit more about the demographics where I'm working now. We have a HIV prevalence rate of 8.8. Contraception uptake is only 56%. Fertility rate has decreased quite a bit at 4.4. Per woman, and the concentration of healthcare personnel you see is quite low, 0.2 physicians per 10,000, 2.8 nurses and midwives. This slide shows the causes of maternal mortality where I work, but they're similar to what you would see, I think, most places in the world. So the direct causes are specific obstetric causes of mortality, and indirect causes are pregnant women who die of things that were not directly the pregnancy, right? And so you see the postpartum hemorrhage, the complications of abortion, of course, preeclampsia and eclampsia, sepsis, all the rest of it. And then the indirect causes, of course, are mostly indicators of the quality of health that these women come into the pregnancy with. So malaria, common killer, and anemia, those two go hand in hand, and HIV and AIDS causes as well. So this part is my story. So I'm going to tell you about a woman named Lowy. She's a 33-year-old woman that I took care of recently in Malawi. And this is the clinic where she got her antenatal care. So she's about 33 and she's pregnant with her 6th child. Lives in a very rural area. I'll show you a photo in a second. The first 3 children were delivered at home with a traditional birth attendant, so a woman from her community. And then the 4th and the 5th were born in her local health center with a nurse midwife. So Malawi actually has done an admirable job over the past 20 or so years decreasing maternal mortality, and they've had a very high uptake of facility-based delivery. From some of the presentations we've seen over the past couple days, we know there are pros and cons to that, but ultimately in this country it's made delivery more safe. So even though she initially delivered at home, she had her other children in the health center with a nurse midwife. So for this pregnancy, she sought antenatal care at that same health center where she delivered babies number 4 and 5. It's about a 40-minute walk from her home. And so here she is. There's a male midwife back there and another clinical officer, and they're providing antenatal care. And that's the road. That's the perhaps 40 minutes walking that she would take to get from her home to the place where she would deliver her baby. So many women would walk that distance in labor. When the contractions start, you can start walking. But in her case, maybe not the best choice. So Malawi does have a national healthcare system. So women do have a right to receive free maternal and neonatal care, care for her children, for general primary health care. And as I mentioned, access is improving. We know that at least 95% of women have at least one antenatal visit, and about 91% are delivering in a healthcare facility, like the woman that I'm describing here, Lowy. And the government, the Ministry of Health, has different safe motherhood strategies. Some of them are described here, improving the provision of an emergency care, constructing maternal waiting homes, more on that in a moment, as well as community-based strategies, sensitization and training of women in the community as community midwives. Okay. Here we are again, taking that walk to the health center. And so back to my patient, Lowy. She is a grand multipara, which means that she's delivered 5 or more children. And women who fall into this category, we label them, yes, as high risk. They have risks of 2 conditions, of an abnormal prolonged labor and also of postpartum hemorrhage. So she may be a woman who is low risk in terms of, she'll probably breastfeed very well, she'll know the signs of labor, she'll know danger signs. So in those ways, she may be low risk, but she's high risk of this morbidity and mortality. And so her nurse correctly recommended that she gives birth in the district hospital. So at 35 weeks gestation, Lowy was booked to wait for labor. And that means that she left her 4 children in the care of her sister, and she traveled to the district hospital where she would await labor. Because we agree, right? For a woman like this, 40 minutes or however many kilometers, it's too far to walk. Which is the name of a theory, right, that perhaps you've heard of, the 3-delay model by Thaddeus and Maines. So this is talking about maternal morbidity and mortality at a global level, that we know that most of these maternal deaths, as I showed earlier, do result from direct obstetric causes. But most of them can indeed be prevented with timely medical treatment. So what is it that gets between women and the care that they need? It's these delays. And Thaddeus and Maine suggested that there are 3 phases of delay. And so globally, when you look at morbidity reports that are written about women who die in labor, they often will break down the causes of death to these 3 delays, and they'll call it a delay 1, delay 2, or delay 3 death. And phase 1 is the part where the woman decides that she'll seek care, or the family decides that they'll seek care. Phase 2 is the identification and the arrival at the medical facility where they're seeking care. Phase 3 is her ability to receive treatment that is appropriate and is adequate. And any breakdown in those factors can lead to delay. So, what comes into play when a woman decides to seek care in a context like Mwai's? Illness factors, right? Does she recognize that there are complications or that she needs to seek care? There are issues related to social norms or legal issues. Is this a wanted pregnancy? Are there sanctions on her for being pregnant at this time? Who helped her conceive this pregnancy? Social or cultural factors related to women's status. Does she have money? Is she able to leave her home? Many women in our community won't walk during the day. They'll only walk at night, which sounds a bit backwards to what you might experience here in Rio, right? You don't want to walk at night, but there the fear is that somebody will see you walking while pregnant. So in many cases, women will not walk to the facility during the day, and as soon as night falls, they come very quickly. We can't talk about women like Mwai without discussing economic status, educational status. There's also the accessibility of the facilities. So are they accessible? Are they close enough? Are they walking distance? Do they have transportation? Do they have roads? So both the accessibility that a health department can go to the facility and say, yes, it's within 5 kilometers, this is perfect for this woman, and also the perceived accessibility. Is it a place that she feels comfortable going? Does she have to pay bribes? Does she need someone to accompany her on the way? And finally, the quality of care impacts a woman's decision to seek care. And we've talked a lot about that over the past couple days. So are the medications and supplies and blood and providers, nurses, midwives, is everything available that she needs? Oops. And so the delay can take place at any one of these points. And often when you have a worst case scenario, the delay takes place at multiple points. So it may take her a while to decide to seek care. It may be that she's several hours from the appropriate facility. And then when she gets there, we have to start from the beginning and figure out what is the issue from a biomedical perspective. What treatment do we have available? Who is going to provide the treatment? And so on. This is another perspective on the same thing. So the AAAQ that you might have heard of, associated with a human rights-based approach to health. So is healthcare available? Are the systems functioning? Are they accessible? Are they acceptable? And most importantly, are they quality, right? It's not enough to just have a facility standing there. Okay. And so, as I mentioned, one of the solutions that the Malawian government and many rural countries have come up with is, rather than taking the woman to the hospital, she can go and she can stay and await labor. And so they build these antenatal waiting homes, a bit like hotels, perhaps, where a woman stays, she sleeps there when she becomes term in her pregnancy and awaits labor. So this woman, because she was high risk, she was instructed to go and wait at the hospital, which she did for several weeks. Over a month, actually, she was there just in case she went into labor. She was far from her 4 children, and even though the health services were free, she had to provide her own food. The antenatal waiting provides only 1 meal a day. She has to care for herself. She is in frequent communication through courier with people at home. And she's been here a month now, and she's now 39 weeks, and she really wants to go into labor. And so, these spaces where women stay together, they can be sites of a lot of positive collaboration between pregnant women and education that goes on. And in other cases, there can be different ideas that come in about how to put oneself into labor. And that's what happened actually with Mwai. So after several weeks in the hospital, she decided to take what we call local Pitocin, which is an herbal remedy to try and induce labor. And labor soon began, as expected. This is an herb, a root that's given and was previously often given by traditional birth attendants, and it stimulates labor. And so labor began, her contractions became stronger, and she reported to the maternity unit for assessment. And so she was there, she was at the hospital when labor began, and had a skilled nurse midwife who was there to assess her. The issue was that the herb that she had taken was very powerful, and Mwai's baby was exhibiting signs of fetal distress. So the heart rate was low, and the nurse correctly listened to the heart rate and recommended that she have a cesarean section, which she did. Okay. And luckily, since she was there at the district hospital, the operating theater was open. There were two surgeons actually available, a trained anesthetist. They had some of the medications that they needed. They had blood on hand. They didn't at that time have the right antibiotics for her surgery, but the baby was born within 2 hours, which in this setting is lightning fast. And the baby, due to the fetal distress, from the very strong contractions, did have a little bit of difficulty at the beginning, but was successfully resuscitated by the midwives. So this is a big success to have a healthy baby born. Okay. However, that's not the end of the story, right? So on the second day after her delivery, Mwai did develop a fever. And it was soon determined that she had what's called postpartum endometritis, which is an infection of the uterus, which may have been related to stimulating labor, may have just been bad luck, right? It happens everywhere to have these infections. But unfortunately, her infection did not respond very well to antibiotics, so she required a second surgery, which was a hysterectomy to remove the infected uterus. Eventually, though, she had actually requested a tubal ligation. She wasn't planning on having more children after this baby, but she did have to stay in the hospital for about 2 months to receive various treatments, including some expensive antibiotics that we had to buy in the capital city that weren't available in a district hospital. She had daily wound dressings, which were excruciatingly painful. And so she took a lot of time of the nursing and surgical team in our hospital, but ultimately she was okay, and she went home after, I think it was a total of 4 surgeries. She was discharged home in good condition with her 2-month-old son. And so this brings us back to the idea of too much too soon and too little too late. So these are 2 extreme situations, and this was from the Lancet article by Sue Ellen Miller and team that came out last year, and this is one of my favorite expressions related to the provision of global health care. So it's a continuum, right? In Brazil, we talk a lot about how we're doing too much too soon. We're doing too many C-sections. We're doing them without indication. We're doing them before women even go into labor, right? But there's also too little too late, which is historically what we talk about in low-resource settings like the one where I work. So in too little too late, there's not enough resources. We're below evidence-based standards. Perhaps it's not necessarily that we don't know what the evidence says, but we're unable to provide it. In some cases, the care is withheld, but in some cases, it's just not available. In Malawi, our C-section rate is around 6%. In the district where I work, it's 10%. But there are babies that die, and there are women who would have the surgery if they were in the right place, and there's a bit of a misallocation sometimes. Too little, too late, of course, is associated with high morbidity and mortality, and historically with low and middle income countries. And then there's the other end of the continuum, too much too soon, which is the routine over-medicalization of normal pregnancy and birth. Again, I'm not arguing with medicalization, like the title of this seminar, right? In some cases, we do want women to have a medicalized birth, and in some situations, that's absolutely appropriate. But to say over-medicalization, right, of what is a normal process. It's not the use of evidence-based interventions. It's not doing amniotomy sometimes, C-section sometimes, induction or augmentation in some cases. It's the unnecessary use, and it's the non-evidence-based interventions. All right, because these are interventions that can be life-saving if we use them appropriately, but if we apply them routinely, they can be, of course, as we know, harmful. And we see a rise in this too much too soon as facility births increase. They increase health costs, as we see in the United States. They can cause harm. And as we've discussed in the panel before, they often concentrate the disrespect and abuse, things being done to laboring and delivering women. Historically associated with high-income countries, but I think in most countries in the world, you see pockets of this in the private sector as well. And so we ask, what caused Mwai's complications, right? Was it too little, too late? So we say, oh, she had a complication, she almost died, we saved her life, right? But she did everything right. She attended antenatal care. Her primary midwife in the rural health center was correct and said, this is a woman who is high risk. She's had many babies. She needs to deliver in a district hospital. And she did. She delivered in the facility with a skilled provider. So this was not a case of too little, too late, necessarily. Was it a case of too much too soon? She had an indication for her C-section. She had fetal distress. It was available and it was life-saving, and it's the reason why she has a healthy baby. But the quality of surgical and post-operative care can be very variable, right? We would always talk in my previous life in the US when I worked training intern obstetricians about how you want and perhaps this is the case in Brazil too, you want your skin incision for the C-section to look perfect, because that's what a woman takes home. She goes in her bikini and she says, look how good my skin incision looks, right? It's perfect. You can't even tell I had a surgery. But that says nothing about what lays beneath, right? What kind of technique was used delivering the baby, closing the uterus, so there's a lot that happens that we don't see when we just appreciate a small scar and a healthy baby, right? The quality of care can be so variable. And in the case of Mwai, in an attempt to prevent complications from too little, too late, she ended up with one of these iatrogenic complications. So it could be that if we had left her in the health center or left her with her traditional birth attendant, she wouldn't have taken anything to induce her labor. She wouldn't have had the fetal distress. Maybe she would have had the fetal distress, but the baby would be born just fine, and none of this would have happened. And so, yes, we say as a team proudly that we saved her life from this life-threatening infection, but the story is a bit more complicated. Yeah, good. So did our interventions help or did they hurt? I wish I knew. But in terms of her experience of care, in terms of quality, she was very, very happy with the care. So at least she has that. So in terms of the way forward, we recognize that too much too soon and too little too late can coexist, especially in the developing world. And we want to focus not just on access to care, but the quality of care. And coming back to the human rights approach to health, that the woman's experience really matters and the quality really matters. And again, what is the way forward? And so, as I said, this is a bit of a conceptual presentation, but the area where I work is in solutions that focus on human resources, that focus on the training, capacitation of nurse midwives, people who are from the communities where they work, and also our skilled birth attendants. In these trainings that I provide as a nurse mentor, we focus on person-centered care, woman-centered care, family-centered care, whatever we want to call it these days, that focus on the experience of the birthing person, and also the judicious use of technology. There's a fetoscope. You guys know the fetoscope? I didn't know it before I moved to Africa, right? And again, what do these solutions look like? It's a group of our nursing trainees. I'm happy to talk about this afterwards, even if it's not the topic of the presentation. Empowering these nurses that we work with, turning them into leaders. This gentleman is a nurse leader who's doing a quality improvement presentation in this photo. He's trying to improve the provision, I think, of neonatal resuscitation equipment in this district where we work. Clinical teaching again. A cohort of nurses that received certificates that they're certified in some advanced midwifery skills. And then ultimately, the woman, the delivering person, is at the center of all this. All right. Thank you.
Ok. Muito obrigada, desculpe. Não sei que linguagem falar. Não, eu sou muito feliz de ser aqui. Acho que essa secção é formidável, porque pode-se ver que o risco é uma coisa situada, que o risco não é uma coisa abstrata, não tem uma abstração de risco, tem uma coisa que é general, que não se pode dizer risco obstétrico é uma coisa que podemos ver para todo mundo. O risco obstétrico no Brasil é muito diferente que risco obstétrico no Porto Rico, que risco obstétrico no Malawi, no Sierra Leone, que cada vez pode ser que aquele é o quadro dentro do qual podemos ver. Eu vou falar, muito agradeço a organizadores deste seminário, porque para mim é absolutamente fascinante, muito interessante essa variabilidade de condições e de situações. Desculpe-me o português também. Pode tentar inglês, mas provavelmente não ser melhor para a maioria da gente. Muito obrigada. Não, eu vou fazer só pequenininha apresentação, só para muito corta, só para mostrar como que é o problema de risco generalmente. Porque Isabel falou um pouco de sociedade de risco, Ulrich Beck, mas a sociedade de risco de Ulrich Beck é risco atômico, risco de mudança climática. Eu vou falar um pouquinho só para explicar um pouco de que vamos falar. Falamos de risco. Que é risco quando falamos de K4? Esses são, para mim, trabalhos de fundamental sobre essa noção de risco. Risco, até século XIX, não se falou de risco, se falou de peligro. tem peligro, mas risco é uma noção probabilista. Para ter uma noção probabilista, você precisa de um trabalho estatístico sobre essa noção, qual é o risco. Antes, coisas científicas são coisas que são seguras. A ciência tem lei. Se não são seguros, isso não é ciência. Isso é folclore, isso não sei. Quando se falou, no século XIX, falou essa ideia de estatística como saber de calcular a probabilidade de um evento, e que é uma ciência fundamental para governar a tempo estatística, tem Estado dentro da estatística, mas também para a gestão de todas as coisas que são de sociedade. Então, vamos ver. Como passa? Aí, que é risco para a saúde? Risco para a saúde, a início do termo, são de sociedade de segurança de vida, prudential. Acá você pode ver a sociedade de prudential, que foi a primeira muito grande sociedade norte-americana de segurança de vida, que foi bom. Se você vai contratar uma segurança de vida, a pessoa que é de boa saúde é um bom risco para a sociedade de segurança, porque vai pagar dinheiro muitos anos, não vai morrer, não precisa fazer a compensação. A pessoa que vai morrer anos depois que contratou um contrato de segurança é um mau risco. Então, foi o trabalho de médicos de segurança para tentar de ver objetivamente se a pessoa é de boa saúde ou de má saúde. Se a pessoa vai ver um médico, normalmente, ela vai dizer a verdade desse médico. Ela não vai mentir, porque o médico quer curar, que o médico cura. Mas se você vai ver um médico de sociedade de segurança, você quer dizer que você é muito boa saúde para comprar seguro. Então, você precisa ter medidas de objetivação, medidas objetivos, que você pode ser, mesmo se a pessoa vai mentir, você tem instrumentos que vai dizer como a medida de tensão arterial, medida de pulmão, para ver se a pessoa... Ok, isso é para tuberculose, a medida de respiração, ver se tem uma doença de pulmão, isso a tensão arterial, todos esses instrumentos foi desenvolvido no século XIX para objetivar a paciente, que o paciente pode mentir, mas o médico pode saber, ok. Então, o que se passou a século XX, se passou uma coisa muito interessante, não sei que você conhece a Framingham Study. É um estudo que iniciou há 70 anos, em 1948, que é de fatores de risco para a doença cardiovascular. E desse estudo de Framingham, saiu a ideia que não que a pessoa é bom risco ou mau risco para seguranças, mas se a pessoa tem fatores de risco para ser doente. A coisa parou de risco da doença cardiovascular. Desculpe. Acá. Essa foi a primeira vez que mostrou que, por exemplo, alto colesterol ou obesidade são alto risco para a doença cardiovascular. Tem essa noção de risco? Então, vamos ver. O problema é que isso é too much, too many. O problema é que talvez buscar riscos pode fazer coisas exageradas. São dois livros que eu recomendo bem. São dois colegas, amigos, que uma é sobre Gil Welch, sobre demais diagnoses. É um risco de medicina. Quando você vai fazer muitos testes, como ele mostrou isso, ontem Carla mostrou que a monitoring da criança, dentro do parto, aumenta o risco de intervenções medicais inúteis. Porque você tem essa noção, como agora a Maria mostrou a inverso, que temos uma avaliação de risco com métodos muito simples, e isso pode ser muito importante para ver que essa criança é a risco e precisamos uma cesárea de urgência. Mas pode ser, a hospitais norte-americanos, tema contrário, tema monitoring, tema non-stop de parteras, e para isso temos uma aumentação de cesáreas que não são necessárias. Ok? Acontece, parto, historicamente, foi uma coisa muito perigosa. Avaliação de risco de parto não é uma coisa idiota. Até século XX, até no país ocidentais, foi um risco muito alto de risco materno. Esse risco não desapareceu. Olha, hoje temos o risco na Europa e Estados Unidos é muito baixo. Estados Unidos é mais alto, provavelmente por causa de medicalização extrema de parto e também too little, too late and too much too early. Tema 2. O Brasil, claro, é mais grande. E a África, sim, um momento. E a África é também... Tá, desculpe, contrário. Ok. A África é também, claro, a Sierra Leone, a Maria vai ir a Sierra Leone, não, eu verifico a verdade. A mais alta do mundo. Ok, tá bom, desculpe. Ok, então se você pode ver que uma de 8.000 europeias pode morrer na parto, é uma 8 de Sierra Leone, que é uma coisa bastante horrível. Não, isso é um livro sobre o excesso de cesáreas nos Estados Unidos. Porque o problema, por que temos risco? E vai acabar acá. Por que temos risco? Que nós falamos de risco, devemos cada vez onde risco no Brasil, risco no Malawi, risco de Porto Rico, risco na França, deve ser esse risco situado, mas também de que tipo de risco falamos. Tem risco para a criança, pode a bebê, pode ter problemas de malformações que são ligados de parto, claro. Tem risco para a mulher, risco de complicações obstetras, que como você explicou, absolutamente razão, que não se fala, no Brasil não se fala nada. O risco de cesárea não existe. O risco cirúrgico não existe. O risco de testes não existe. Se faz muitos testes que não existem. Mas tem o risco de violência obstétrica, que vemos, tem o risco psicológico para a mulher, que a parto se passa mal. Agora tem também o risco psicológico de ser desapontada, porque tem também a ideologia que a parto deve ser maravilhoso. Agora temos uma série de artigos no jornal britânico The Guardian, temos uma série sobre experiências de parto que se passou mal. E foi um debate se precisamos falar disso. Algumas feministas dizem precisamos falar disso. Temos uma ocultação que a parte pode ser doloroso, pode ser violente, pode ser a mulheres que dão luz a primeira vez, pode ser muito surpresa sobre violência de experiência. Devemos falar disso, tem problemas. Outras mulheres dizem não, especialmente no Brasil, não precisamos falar disso, já temos problema de as mulheres não querem dar luz naturalmente para parto vaginal, tem uma má reputação. Se vamos falar que tem problemas, é que pode ser violenta, é que pode ser uma surpresa, vai ser pior. E tem risco para profissionais de saúde. Nos Estados Unidos se fala muito de medicina defensiva. Porque a obstetras explicam nos Estados Unidos que se a mulher tem complicações, não vai judicar na risco, não vai ir fazer o processo ao médico. Mas se a bebê tem problemas, vai. Então, é melhor fazer demais cesarianas, demais outros problemas, porque o risco mesmo mínimo para a criança pode ser um risco grande para a profissional. E tem risco também de avaliação negativa de profissionais, de estresse ou de burnout. E tem risco para a instituição. Ok, então vamos acabar com isso, que quando falamos de risco, precisamos cada vez dizer onde e para quem. Obrigada. Então, vai abrir debate. Temos 3 apresentações apaixonantes. Então, ok. Sheila.
Thank you. In the case of Malawi, while the mother was there for 2 months, during that time, was the baby in the hospital with the mother? What happened in terms of breastfeeding, et cetera? Could you elaborate?
Sure, yes. So in this case, yes, the baby was able to stay in the hospital with his mother. Incredibly, she produced breast milk very well all the way through this experience. Women in Malawi are very good breastfeeders. It's pretty rare that they have difficulty, happily, unlike where I'm from, where it's much more challenging. So she was able to breastfeed the baby. She may have supplemented with formula briefly at some point, but we did have the mother on nutritional supplements because the diet there is very low protein. And actually because the woman had an antibiotic-resistant infection, she was in a private room in the hospital. So she was able to be there with her baby to be able to turn out the lights at night during this long hospitalization, to have visitors, to have her family come in and stay in what was a small room, but at least a private room for the course of that time. So the baby's doing wonderfully well, yes. Yeah.
One good thing. Okay, Cassia.
I'm going to speak in English, and then I'm just going to speak in Portuguese very briefly. But thank you to everyone. This was a great panel. So the first question is for Isabel, is about what maternal infant health care looks like in Puerto Rico today, especially after the hurricane last year. I know that's a very large question, but I thought maybe you could comment on that. And then for Maria and Andreza, what struck me is that you both used the term hotel. So the woman who wanted to describe getting a cesarean in Brazil as a hotel, and then Maria described the antenatal or the waiting room as hotels. So that's not a question, but just an observation. So, well, I'm not going to speak in Portuguese.
Okay. Yeah, maybe the 3 or 4. Yeah.
Eu queria fazer uma pergunta para a Maria. Você entende português?
Vale. Sim.
Tá. Eu fiquei curiosa para saber como que é a relação dos profissionais de saúde e os saberes tradicionais, assim, tentando talvez fazer uma ponte, the traditional knowledge, cultural knowledge that comes from the local sited and the health professionals. Can you talk a bit about it?
I can put on my headphones too if you want to ask them more.
Okay, Simone, you want to ask the question? Okay. So maybe you can ask. Yeah, so maybe you can answer the question. We have more minutes.
Não, só se você puder falar um pouco de como é a relação entre os saberes tradicionais, principalmente das parteiras tradicionais, das parteiras leigas, com os profissionais de saúde no Malawi. Eu achei, se você puder comentar um pouco sobre isso. Obrigada.
No more questions? No mais questões? Okay, então maybe you can answer, please. There is one more?
Yeah, I can go first, fine. Yes, so it's very interesting. So Malawi, in the course of encouraging facility-based childbirth, did outlaw traditional birth attendants, very much similar to the process that Shayla described this morning. They first had programs to try to train traditional birth attendants, and then had to move in the direction of facility-based birth. And again, I don't think it says anything about the skills of the birth attendants, but really, to me, it's much more about the location, the physical distance of women when they're giving birth in the home, the difficulty in emergency transportation and supply chain, delivering safe birth kits and supplies to traditional birth attendants or birth attendants in the community. In this setting, it's just not feasible. I mean, it's hard enough for us to get our oxytocin into these rural health centers and clean gloves and things like that. So that to me is perhaps one of the underlying reasons why they didn't see success in these early programs to capacitate TBAs. It's interesting, so the healthcare providers that I work with, and I'm in a rural district hospital setting, they're very young, just as Sheila had described in Guatemala. I have one or two colleagues who are in their 50s, but really most of them are in their 20s, they're younger. They are trained in a biomedical fashion, but their technical skills, their life-saving skills, I find are quite good. And they do highly discourage use of traditional medicine. They do discourage delivery in the home, all the rest of it. But there is a certain respect because many of the young nurses and midwives that I work with come from villages and are from the communities where they work. And so they do have a deep respect for the role that this sort of woman or provider plays in the community. So you wouldn't see them, you might see them like joking about it or saying, this baby was born on the way to the hospital, but we really know what happened because the cord was clamped and everything was clean. This baby, this was an intentional home delivery. But it is part of their culture, and they are respectful towards the actual people who are providing those services in the community. If that's a bit of the answer, yeah. And in response to Cassia's comments about the hotels, all I can say is that it may be a open ward with beds and mosquito nets, but it's one of the brightest and cleanest places a lot of these women have seen. So even though it might not be a hotel that one of Andreza's patients would be happy to stay in, it's a safe space for them.
I wanted to say something quickly along those lines, if I could. I didn't have time, but after the 1980s, there was about a handful of midwives working in Puerto Rico that became sort of certified midwives, and midwives were illegal. They weren't even contemplated in the law. They have tried to rescue a lot of the previous skills and some of the knowledge. They see themselves as sort of having an umbilical cord with, traditional midwives. So they've done some work in trying to rescue that, but they've been formally trained as midwives. Anyway, so and then your question, I only can answer this anecdotally because I'm not working and I'm not doing research on today in Puerto Rico. But, the economic situation is terrible. The hurricane made it worse. And what's happened directly related to childbirth is many Puerto Ricans have left the island, and even more so, they were leaving before the hurricane. 10 years ago, there were more Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico than in the United States. Currently, there are more in the United States than Puerto Rico, so it's a massive out-migration. Along with that, especially after the hurricane, there's been a massive out-migration of doctors, and especially specialists and subspecialists. So in a lot of cases, there aren't even obstetricians, and even before the hurricane, so many had left practice, and they just, if anything, are doing gynecology. In the United States, there's some places called red states, right, where there's just not enough obstetricians to attend. So all of a sudden, there's a different attitude towards midwives and home births, right? Because somebody's got to take care of these women, right? So I think because people do get a lot of prenatal care, but they don't get prenatal care much the first trimester, other than some vitamins and go home. And then they start to be covered by insurance. And there is public health, but that's also been starting to be more privatized with neoliberal policy, et cetera. So it's kind of gotten, as you see the statistics in the United States, more precarious and more complicated. And I think midwives have a potential space and possibility that they didn't have 20 years ago. So I think it'll be interesting. Sorry, I didn't answer it with a lot of data.
Eu vou só fazer o comentário para complementar. Eu acho que a Cassia fez uma boa observação, não é à toa também que a gente está nessa composição. Eu acho que a gente fala de cenários diferentes, né? E como a Ilana colocou, acho que a gente precisa sempre olhar essa questão do risco de modo situado. O fato de eu falar também deste público específico, né, desse risco e dessas outras dimensões do risco, não quer dizer que a gente tenha outros riscos também para gerenciar. Eu acho que a Simone está aqui, ela também já falava dessa questão do paradoxo que a gente vive, né? A gente tem lugares também no Brasil que a gente passa a dificuldade da falta de intervenções disponíveis no momento oportuno, né? E eu acho que a gente sofre também com o excesso de intervenções, a gente conjuga. Mas aqui eu acho que a gente tem a representação desses dois cenários muito bem posta, né? Mas bem como fechou a Maria, eu acho que a gente fecha também este evento, né? E é legal pensar que a medicalização do parto também precisa ser colocada, voltada para um foco principal, que é a qualidade desse cuidado, é a mulher nesse centro, né, do parto, né? Eu acho que hoje, já fazendo uma fala de fechamento, eu acho que hoje também, quando a Simone, né, nos provoca, que é necessário que a gente subverta também esses discursos, até mesmo sobre a medicalização, porque às vezes a gente acaba reiterando um discurso de que é medicalizado e a gente fala muito contra este discurso, mas o quanto a gente precisa também torná-lo mais propositivo. Eu acho que a gente sai daqui com outros pensamentos, né? Esse é o nosso propósito. E caminhando, sim, para um fechamento. Vai, Simone? Quer fazer? Claro. Pode. Vou abrir a...
Ok. Primeiro, parabenizar a mesa e o seminário inteiro, foi maravilhoso, né? Aprendemos todos muita coisa. E gostei muito de trazer o conceito de muito cedo, e tecnologia demais, e tarde demais, pouco demais, né? Digo isso porque temos escrito sobre isso. No Brasil, as pessoas adoecem e morrem por falta de tecnologia apropriada e adoecem e morrem por excesso de tecnologia inapropriada. E fiquei pensando, na semana passada, estive no Congresso da Federação Internacional de Ginecologia e Obstetrícia e assisti uma apresentação falando como a introdução da ocitocina para intensificar o parto, to augment labor, na África, estava levando a uma epidemia de hemorragia. Porque se você usa ocitocina durante o trabalho de parto, você desensibiliza os receptores depois do parto e a pessoa tende a ter mais hemorragia. Então, você pode também ter os dois principais problemas da ocitocina é aumentar o risco de hemorragia e o outro provocar sofrimento fetal. Fiquei pensando no caso que você descreveu como um caso que faz ocitocina, começa o sofrimento fetal, tem que fazer uma cesárea, depois disso tem uma hemorragia e assim por diante. Então, como essa mulher tem riscos adicionais por estar no hospital. No entanto, ela sobrevive porque está no hospital. Então, acho que o debate tem que levar em consideração essa complexidade, né? E quanto isso custa em termos de vida, de sofrimento, de dinheiro, enfim, a qualidade da experiência. Eu acho que esse seminário foi uma grande inspiração para mim, acredito, para todos nós, né?
Obrigada, Simone. E na linha dos agradecimentos, a Ilana vai comentar.
Não, só não tem mais questões? Não? Então, precisamos agradecer todos para organizadores, para todo o personal técnico, para todo que faz esse encontro que foi maravilhoso, acho, para toda a gente. Então, um grande obrigado para todos.
Obrigada, plateia, também. Quem participou com a gente aqui presencialmente, quem acompanhou online. Agradecer também a Lúcia, a Mariana, a Luísa e a Larissa, que foram nossas apoiadoras eventuais aqui, as nossas monitoras, recebendo ali os pôsteres, fazendo as inscrições. Agradecer a todo o pessoal do Museu da Vida, né, que nos deu bastante suporte aqui neste evento, com o material também. E agradecer a equipe com a qual eu trabalho, gente, porque sem eles, acho que nada disso seria possível. Luiz, Marina e Fernanda, assim, nossos companheiros para pensar esse seminário desde um primeiro café, um ano atrás, né? Obrigada, pessoal. Obrigada a vocês.